Book Reviews, the place where we shine a spotlight on indie books and their authors. This month's focus is the book Choosing Fate, and that is by J.N. Stein, who is a fantastic author of werewolf romantasy. Choosing Fate is the third book of the Stone Sister series. If you are unfamiliar with this series, then I urge you to go and check it out. This episode, whilst it is spoiler free for Choosing Fate, it does allude to the previous two books and it does spoil certain events that happen within those. So if you are wanting to read this book, or you think you might want to read this book, I thoroughly encourage you to go onto Amazon or Kindle Unlimited, get yourself a copy, catch up, and then come back. But for those who have read it, or maybe for those who just don't mind spoilers, come along on our wonderful journey. So as always with these things, I like to start with the characters. I think that characters are really key to driving a narrative. I know that sounds obvious, but to me, if I don't like a character or if I can't understand a character, then I tap out. So I like to start with this because for me, it's one of the most important things. So in this story, we are following Saf. Now, each story of this series focuses on a different sister of the sisterhood. First one was Daya, second one was Emmy, and now we're following Saf. Now, she has just underwent a huge trauma. She's lost her life partner Nathan, who sacrificed him to save the alpha of the Red Mountain Pack, Asher. Now normally with these books, the sisters that we followed so far, they start off in relatively good places mentally. It's normally quite light, it's normally quite breezy at the beginning, and you know, as the stories progress, more and more turmoil gets introduced. With this one, however, Saf is absolutely just swarmed by her grief. She is not a very nice character to begin with. We don't like her very much. And it's quite a contrast to how we've seen her in the previous books, where she's always been so optimistic. She's been so happy. She's always found joy in things. And so to see her so angry, lashing out at her sisters, not wanting any help, just drowning herself in alcohol, not taking joy in any of the things that she used to, is really quite shocking, not just for the people around her, but for us as readers as well. Now, one of the great things about J.N. Stein is that she writes very genuinely. She doesn't sort of pander to her audiences and try and sort of give them what they want. She stays very true to her characters, what they're experiencing, and just generally like how life is. This is the great thing about Stein's work, is that even though it's fantastical and we're in this sort of werewolf reality where there are witches and vampires and all kinds, she still keeps things very grounded and human. So even though all these fantastical things are going on, the core of it all is something that we actually can all very much relate to. Everyone has experienced loss. Everyone has experienced death of some kind, and the hole that that leaves. And if you haven't, fair play. But most people have. And, you know, just that loss of sense of control, just feeling like everything is falling apart, is really captured so well here. And what we get to see is Saf's struggles with it, but also the people around her and how that struggle ripples out, especially with her sisters. And it actually takes people who aren't so close to her to help pull her out of this funk that she's in. And that is not to say that it's an easy journey. Stein does not let up on us as readers or on Saf, bless her. And she is up and down, constantly battling with herself, feeling guilt, feeling remorse, feeling anguish and, you know, desperation, and all of these things that come with the grief process. And because we've known because we've known Saf in previous books, like we're right there with everyone else, that we want to see her back. And it's really beautiful the way that it all kind of turns out. And I'm not going to say anything else because A, I don't want to spoil anything, but B, I also just want you guys to just go on this journey with Saf as well. because Nathan was a really wonderful character, and you know, it is very sad when he dies, especially because he sacrifices himself. Now, what Saf doesn't realize at first is that she is actually fated to be mated with Asher, the alpha, who Nathan sacrificed himself for. Now, within this world, there are fated mates. For those who don't know, fated mates is when you have two souls that are destined to be together. Now, in these books, they are predestined by the moon goddess, who is essentially the overriding deity in this universe. And fated mates for a very long time, for about 30 years, were not a thing, because they got wiped out by something called the fated plague. And so in book 1 of this series, we start to see fated mates come back in, but it's a very nervy thing. People aren't entirely sure how to deal with it. They've never seen it before in their lifetime, you know, so it's a very, you'd think in theory it should be a very happy thing, but it's actually very turbulent, sorry. And the struggle that Saf has with her new feelings towards Asher, and the guilt that comes from that, not only because he was the one that Nathan saved, that Nathan saved and therefore died, but just generally feeling something new for someone else when you're still amidst the grief of the loss of a love is very, very hard. And we see all of that turmoil as well. But Asher is a wonderful character. He is one of the most interesting characters of this series. He has a lot of depth, a lot of layers. He has things going on that we don't know about, and we do find out about in this book, and I'm not going to say anything, but it leads to some really wonderful, wholesome, heartfelt moments. He's funny. He's not like any other alpha we've seen, nor apparently many other people within this world have seen. Like, he's got pink hair, he's got like cupcake tattoos, he plays guitar, he's you know, he's a very creative guy. He's sober. There is no drinking or drugs on site on their land, and he's just this complete sort of almost like a puppy. But then he can like hit hard when he needs to, you know? So he's not to be underestimated. And I think some of the other characters do underestimate him. So it's really interesting to see what happens and how that all kind of unfolds. We also get to know some side characters a little bit more that got introduced in the previous books. There's a pair of witch hybrids who are twins, and we get to learn a bit more about their story, their powers. They have a much bigger focus in this story as well, and it's an interesting dynamic because they have so far been attacking the packs, and now there's almost maybe kind of sort of, but not really, like a truce and alliance, but they kind of, the circumstances kind of like push everything together. But then there's other elements going on, which again, I'm not going to say, but that adds a very interesting aspect. And you're just like, what? This is the thing. Everything's also twists and turns. And then we have lovely other side characters like Syl, who is just the sweetest, and she befriends Saf, and she is a big help in Saf's journey, and she's just so innocent and sweet and lovely and good, and like you can't, I tell you what, you cannot help but just fall in love with every single one of these characters. Or if you can't love them, then you love to hate them. There is not one character in this series which is just meh. Everyone brings it. Stein writes such fully developed, layered, amazing characters, and they are all so different. Like, there is such a variety here. So you will find yourself relating to one of the sisters or one of the alphas, or, you know, one of the side characters. There's just no way that you can't, because they are all pretty much based on people that Stein knows and loves and cares for, as you'll hear in the interview, if you go and listen to it or watch it. You know, she's based the 5 sisters on herself and her 4 sisters, you know, so these characters are very real, and we can't help but get completely captured up in their stories, and it's magic. So we've kind of mentioned some of the themes already, mentioned about loss and grief, the journey that we go through when we're experiencing these deep emotions. So I'm not going to talk any more about that, but what I want to talk about is the theme of forgiveness. There is a lot of turmoil between characters. There are characters who have done abhorrent things, and some of the characters have a hard time forgiving, and other characters want to try and build bridges, and then there becomes the overriding thing of those 2 people who have opposing views then being angry at each other for those views, and then it becomes a thing about whether they can forgive each other and whether they can see from each other's perspectives, and that is a really big theme that runs throughout this book, and I'm quite certain that's probably going to crop up again because it's just such a human like thing. You know, it's what makes us human, is our ability to forgive, our ability to empathize, and it's definitely played into here because there is so much anger and so much angst swirling around in this book, and you have to take that moment to decide when enough is enough. When is it actually causing more damage to yourself than it is to the person that you're mad at, and what that anger is doing to you internally and mentally, and is it worth it? So that's a really interesting aspect about this book that we've not really looked at before too much. And also as well, like having that unconditional love that the sisters have, and Pearl treats them horribly. You know, she lashes out at them, she blames them, she, you know, it's really so easy for us to stay mad at someone when they've treated us that way, and of course we have patience, and of course we you know, we empathize and things. But sometimes it does get to a point where enough is enough. And again, we see those types of themes being raised within this book. And the thing is with sisters and sisterhood, especially ones as tight as this one is that they still find that strength to love unconditionally. And some find it easier than others. And there are definite rifts between particular sisters and Saf, but you know, she is really struggling with this grief, and when it counts they still all come through, and it's just such a wonderful representation of that unconditional love between family, between women, between sisters, you know. Other themes. So we really take a dark turn in this book, not just because of Saf's loss, but because I'm trying not to spoil things, but we have a new villain, and he is kind of tied in with the previous book's villain, but he has his own agenda, which is brutal, like awful. And again, it very much ties into things that happen in our real world. There is a supernatural element to the crimes that he's committing, but essentially what it boils down to is things that happen every day in this world, and it's abhorrent, it's awful, and it's a terrifying thing. So the fact that we are delving into this real dark, seedy underworld of this universe is really interesting. I love dark literature, so for me this is very exciting, and I am in equal parts excited and terrified to see where this goes. And yeah, yeah, it's all very exciting though in different ways. It is all very exciting, but it's definitely, whatever happens in this book, it's definitely not something that we're saying goodbye to just yet. And yeah, yeah, that's all I want to say about it. But also as well, what else we got? So we've got, we also have as well, like, I think the theme of sacrifice, the greater good. Hot Fuzz reference for you there. But we have all of these positive things, but also like just thinking about the bigger picture beyond yourself. And this is something that unfortunately these characters have to deal with all the time. They have to put their own wants and needs to the side to think about what's best for the pack, to think about what's best for their families, to think about what's best for their race. And it's not always easy, obviously. And this book, sort of continuing on from the darkness that sort of raises its head in this book, like more so than in the other books, this book is not afraid to go to some really brave places. There is all kinds of peril that you don't necessarily expect. And it definitely, you feel a shift with this book in terms of tone. And from my understanding, it's only going to sort of go darker and darker and deeper down this rabbit hole. So I, for one, am very excited. And it also attests to how well of a writer J.N. Stein is, because she understands that you can't just keep churning out the same sort of formula. And whilst there is absolute differences between Fearing Fate and Rejecting Fate, the first and second books of this series, there is even by the second book, there is a sense of familiarity, and partly it's because we are following a lot of the same characters, but it does sort of follow a very similar kind of, what's the word, sort of formula, but the formula completely breaks in this one, and it sort of leaves you feeling a bit uneasy, because you're like, oh, this is new, this isn't what we've had before. But it's great, and it's exactly what's needed at this point of the series, and I can't wait to just sort of see how things turn out and how outside of the box this series goes. Yeah, it's really good. So as you can imagine, with this being a werewolf series, the setting is very important. There is lots of different wilderness landscapes, there's mountains, there's forests, all the stuff that I love. They always live just outside of civilization because they have their own rules. They also, for obvious reasons, they have very different lifestyles. And what's really interesting is how each pack is almost like a military base, some more so than others, but the way that they operate, they have like a warrior team, they have like a security team, they have an intelligence team. It's very militant, it's very like army like, and they all work together as a unit, that each one has their certain roles. They have sort of subdivisions of leadership. You've got the alpha, you've got the beta, you know, you've got all of that. And they're all linked. They have mind links. So when you're part of a pack, you are mind linked to everyone else. So you can just talk to each other telepathically, which is a really cool thing. And yeah, it's very, yeah, it's very sort of like militant in that way. And also as well, like the military, it's very much like, you know, a family. You know, you have these unique experiences that nobody else really can relate to, and it bonds you as such. So that all very much comes into play. And, you know, J.N. Stein, she is in the army. So she pulls, again, a lot from her own experiences, which is why I just think that these books work so well, because it's, obviously they're not true stories or anything, but, you know, there are aspects that are based on real knowledge from its author, so it comes off as very authentic. And it's really interesting when you see all of these different packs kind of come together, and the alphas like butting heads, and, you know, the betas all being broy and things, but like, it's very fun. And you know, each book we kind of collect a new pack. You know, because the Stone Sisters always end up being fated to an alpha. And like, so each one we meet a new pack, and then the alphas all kind of work together against this, like, you know, common enemy. But it makes for quite a lot of humour. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of sort of like soft rivalry. And it just works really well. And then you have, as I said, you have this backdrop of rivers and forests and mountains and all the kind of imagery that you relate to werewolves, being out in nature, and the way that they utilize their surroundings. So again, it's very tactical. So, you know, in the Red Mountain pack in this book, they're surrounded by mountains, and so it sort of shelters them, and it makes for like good vantage points and things. So yeah, they have like, again, nothing is done by accident. Everything is by design with J.N. Stein. So that translates into the way that the packs are organized. Everything is for a reason. Nothing is really by accident. There are very particular things and reasons for every decision made. So yeah, it's a very symbiotic and relaxed and beautiful sort of setting, and sort of the makeup of these packs, which just juxtaposes wonderfully with the chaos that happens in these books. You know, it's just like, oh, this is so nice, this is lovely, oh god, that sounds gorgeous, and you're just envisioning it in your mind, and you know, you can see everything so clearly, and oh yeah, someone's getting shot at, brilliant. Oh great, there were some wolves just, you know, chewing on each other's necks, fantastic. So yeah, that's that always kind of like makes me laugh a little bit, but I'm very quickly taken over by the action that's happening, and I get completely drawn back into all the action and drama, so I don't get to sort of relish the surroundings for too long. But I am not complaining, because the drama and the action that happens in this book, in these books, are really fucking good. So yeah, it's difficult to talk about, because where this is like the third one in the series, there's lots of history, but it's not in this book. And so I don't want to talk about the other books, because I'm focusing on this book, and I don't want to reveal too much either. So it's kind of like trying to find things to sort of discuss that are non-spoiler is a bit tricky. However, I do hope that this has whet your appetite. I do hope that there is something that I've said that intrigues you, because these books, these characters, this writing is absolutely worth your time. It is worth the money spent on it. You can get it at Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. And I just, these books excite me. They really excite me. And I just want everyone to read them. So the next book, Finding Fate. It's like trying to keep track of all the names and the characters. Finding Fate, that is in the works. You can get chapter uploads as they are released through Ream, R-E-A-M. And I think it's Aria, yeah. And you can follow JN Stein on Instagram, and she's not on TikTok, but you can follow her on Instagram, and she's very active on there. I thoroughly suggest that you check out the interview. It was so much fun. JN Stein is just such a wonderful person. We've really got to know each other over the last couple of months since I started her books. And she's just so genuine and so sweet and just the loveliest person, very funny. She has a wicked sense of humor. And yeah, just go follow her, go check out the interview, go check out the books. And yeah, please drop a comment, let me know what you think. Go and rate and review it, and also as well, just any books, especially indie books that you read and enjoy, go rate and review them. You have no idea how important that is for authors. It really does so much good. And while you're at it, give me a rating and a review, thanks. And you can check my social medias out. So I am on Facebook under Kate Anjou's book reviews. You can check me out on TikTok and Instagram under kate.anjous.book.reviews. Or you can email me at kateanjousbookreviews@outlook.com. Any feedback is always appreciated. If you would like to follow me, I do put out content fairly regularly. If you are listening to this show and you want to see the reviews and see the interviews, you can do so on YouTube under Kate Anjou's book reviews. Just sensing a theme here. And the episodes come out monthly, so yeah, plenty of ways to interact, as much or as little as you want to, but the most important thing is you go check out these books, you leave, you know, good ratings and reviews. Honest, don't you know, don't pander, but you know, I can't see, at least with these books, I can't see anyone leaving a bad review, because they're just so good. They're just so good. So next episode, I'm going to be joined by Brian M. Sammons. He is a really good friend of mine and a fantastic author. He primarily writes cosmic horror, very kind of Lovecraftian and dark. He is also an editor, and he has a great passion for things like Dungeons and Dragons and horror generally, and is a podcaster, and he really has his fingers in many pies, but we will be discussing his writing. So I'm really excited for him to come on. I'm so excited to introduce you to him, and I know that we're going to have a really great time. So thank you very much for checking out this episode. If you haven't already, check out the interview with JN Stein, go check out her social medias, and as I said, most importantly, go check out her books. Choosing Fate and its predecessors, Rejecting Fate and Fearing Fate, are all available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. And her new book, Finding Fate, is available chapter by chapter as they go on Ream. And the full edition will be available in, I think, October. But as I said, it will say on the interview, just go double check that. And yeah, thanks very much. I'll see you next time. Bye.